subject. The subject is TESHUVAH. So the Rambam has one of the Svarim he wrote, the Sefer HaMitzvahs. And the Sefer HaMitzvahs is an outline of all Taryag mitzvahs and a basic definition of all of them. Right, just a bit of background. Halacha l'Moishe miSinai that there's Taryag mitzvahs. If you count every time it says in the Torah, do or don't do, it's thousands. So we get 613. So there's all kinds of klolim, because many of the tzivuyim and the loisas are details in a more general mitzvah. And there's all kinds of klolim in this, and the Rav Sadia Goyen and many made their list of Taryag mitzvahs. So the Rambam has his Taryag mitzvahs, and divided into two, mitzvahs aseh, mitzvahs loisaseh. So mitzvah number 73 is making confession, vidoy. Let's read it. By this injunction, by this tzivah, this is a translation. We are commanded to make oral confession, vidoy bepeh, of the sins we've committed against the Eibishter, Baruch Hu, after we have repented from them. And then he goes on to give the details, what you have to say, chatasi, avisi, pashati. So the Mefarshim ask a big kasha. Why doesn't the Rambam list TESHUVAH? Why is he zeroing in on vidoy, on the oral confession, and he misses the main mitzvah, the mitzvah to do TESHUVAH? He says, after you did TESHUVAH, what's the mitzvah? He doesn't mention, that's not the mitzvah. The mitzvah is this vidoy. Why? Why doesn't he mention the TESHUVAH itself? And before we get on to the three answers I'm going to share with you from the Achronim, just explain why b'chalal vidoy. Why, just enough to repent in the heart. Why do you have to orally say it? So the answer basically is that we know that when you have an emotion, whatever it is in your heart, and you say the words, it intends, and your own ears hear what you said, it brings it home much stronger, and the emotion becomes much more intense. You see this in human life and everything. You're feeling love, feeling love. You say the words, I love you. Not only you're expressing it, the other person now hears what you're feeling, the actual feeling inside intensifies. You're feeling upset. And then you start saying why you're upset, you get more upset or angry. You start talking about it, we're at the airport saying goodbye, and you say the words goodbye, then the guy starts bursting into tears. What happened? You just said the words goodbye. But that's the power of words. That's why when we daven, we have to say the words, the power of words. Your own ears hear the words, it intensifies the actual feeling. And it's on many levels also in learning. You're learning something. You understand it, but when you articulate it in words, you will understand it clearer. This is a whole sugya in Chassidus, that words are rooted very deep in the nefesh, very deep, and when you engage in words, it unlocks a very deep part of you that the mind and heart doesn't unlock, only the actual physical word. Okay, that's an aside. Good. So there's the power of vidoy bepeh. It's a very powerful thing. But at a simple level, your ears hear, I did this, it just brings it home. It just brings it home much more powerfully. Fine. It doesn't answer, I'm just putting this as an aside, why there should be vidoy altogether. But our question is, why doesn't the Rambam mention TESHUVAH first and foremost? So one teretz from the Minchas Chinuch is like this. He says, TESHUVAH is not a mitzvah. It's a choice. TESHUVAH is not a commandment. It's if you're going to do TESHUVAH, you choose to do TESHUVAH, then the mitzvah is you got to say vidoy. He gives an example, kind of like a get. Is a mitzvah to give a get? Obviously not. It's like, better not. So, but if you're going to divorce your wife, you do it this way. There's no mitzvah to give a get. It's if you're going to, you have to do it with all the laws of Gittin. Likewise, better, a person shouldn't have sinned. If you do TESHUVAH, you shouldn't sin in the first place. If you did sin and you choose to do TESHUVAH, then here's the instruction. You have to orally confess. So that's the answer of Minchas Chinuch. B'kitzer, it's not TESHUVAH per se, it's not the mitzvah. In theory, shouldn't have to, but more importantly, it's a choice. There's nowhere the Torah says you have to do TESHUVAH. It's your choice. You should, if you sinned, but it's your choice. what we have to do with the mitzvahs. And if you didn't, then one should. And this is how you do it. But it's not a commandment per se. Clear? That's the answer to the Minchas Chinuch. Yeah? Then a second answer is, offered by the Achronim, that Teshuvah is a general mitzvah. And we have and I'll explain you why in a minute, but before I get to explain why it's a mitzvah klolis, in counting the 613 mitzvahs, we only count specific directives, not mitzvahs that embrace all of Yiddishkeit. Now, I didn't show you here, but I didn't give all you the sources, but I'll just share with you. When the Rambam in Hilchos Teshuvah talks about Teshuvah, and likewise the Alter Rebbe in Tanya, it's like this. When the person does an Aveda, what's Teshuvah? It's not simply, I'm not going to do this again. The Teshuvah has to be a commitment to everything, to all the mitzvahs. What precipitates us is this one transgression, but it has to bring you to a reevaluation and a commitment to do everything that God commands. Like in a relationship, yeah? Husband and wife. So the husband did something, hurt his wife. She did something that, so it's not enough that, okay, won't do this anymore. The person's got to think, what does it say about my relationship altogether that I allowed myself to do this? Something's wrong with the whole picture. So this has to lead to a deeper devotion in general, a new overall commitment. That's what teshuvah, even on a specific sin, must lead to, and that's proper teshuvah. And again, we can see the quotes of the Rambam. He says, black and white, and what's teshuvah? That he will do all the mitzvahs and not all that. Hence, that's our answer. Why doesn't the Rambam mention teshuvah per se as one of the 613 mitzvahs? Because really it embraces all taryag. What does he say? The specific detail of vidui. This I wouldn't know. That when you do teshuvah, it's not enough in your heart. You have to what? Articulate it orally. He only identifies that because that is a specific component that's not part of all the other mitzvahs that you have to orally say it. That's why he mentions it. But the teshuvah component, that's everything. That's embracing all of Yiddishkeit. And mitzvahs which embrace all of Yiddishkeit, there are other ones like that are embracing everything, don't make it to the list of the specific. They don't belong in the list of specific mitzvahs because they're not specific. They're kloli, they're general. They're clear? That's the second teretz. All right, so the first teretz was, it's not a mitzvah. Second teretz is, it's a big mitzvah. It's all the mitzvahs. Now we have a third teretz. Third answer is, it is an individual mitzvah. It is. So why does he mention it? Answer. Because there's two components to the mitzvah. There's the feeling in the heart, and then there's the practical, the observable, saying the words. So we have a principle that when a mitzvah involves two components, something internal and something external, we only mention the external. That's how it's identified. An example is, I could show you inside, but I'll share it with you, the mitzvah to daven. Davening is really the service of the heart. And you should serve God with all your heart. Says the Gemara, what does it mean to serve God with the heart? That's davening. Davening is serving God with the heart. Yet, when the Rambam lists the mitzvah of davening, he doesn't say, and this is the mitzvah of the service of the heart. He says, lispala. Lispala means to say the words. It means to say the words. Now, when you say the words, it means that you mean it from the heart. And that's the din taket. At least the main part of davening, which is the Shema and beginning of Shema Nesra, if a person does not have intent that he's talking to the Eibishter, is not Yaitse. The essence of davening has to have this kavanah. So, and that's the practical dimension, is the actual words. So the Rambam mentions vidui. Implicit in vidui is the teshuvah. Why doesn't he identify teshuvah? Because when we're talking about a mitzvah that has a practical dimension and an internal dimension, we mention the practical, but it comes together because the practical dimension is meaningless without the internal dimension. If you say the Shema and you don't, or you say the first brach of the Shemoneh Esrei, and you're just saying it, they don't even know what he's saying, you're not yoytze, you got to say it again. Another example is, if a person travels in a mikveh and he's holding a sheretz, he's holding one of the 8 crawling creatures that makes a person tamei. The mikveh does nothing because while you're traveling, you're holding the opposite. So it's not like something else prevents you. There's no mikveh. If a person, just understand, a person says, I'm sorry, it doesn't mean it. It's meaningless. Imagine saying vidui, it doesn't mean it. Not only does it mean it's a mockery. You're saying I'm sorry and you don't mean it. It means nothing. So vidui obviously means you mean it. That's a given. It obviously means you're doing tshuva in your heart. So why doesn't he mention tshuva? Because it's part of the package. Vidui means tshuva. That's like tefillah means kavanah. So it's a principle that when you have a mitzvah that has an external component and an internal component, and the external component is only meaningful if it comes together with the internal, you don't mention the internal, just mention the practical. Practical. So again, just like when it comes to davening, he doesn't say the mitzvah is to serve God with the heart. He says davening mitzvah is say the words, but implicit in that, it obviously is put your heart in it. So too, when he said the mitzvah of tshuva is say you're sorry, it's obvious that you feel sorry because the saying sorry means nothing, and it's one package. And when we're giving the list, we give the practical component. That's the third teretz. So yeah, we're clear on the third teretz. So we have 3 terutzim. First teretz is it's not a mitzvah. It's not a mitzvah. It's not a commandment altogether. If you choose to do it, and if you have to do it, this is how you do it. Second teretz is it covers all the mitzvahs. And the third teretz is it is an individual mitzvah teshuvah, but it's implicit in vidui. It's implied. He doesn't identify it because it's one package, and he just identifies the external packaging, the words which only are meaningful if you mean it. Otherwise, it's gone. So it's implicit. So the Rebbe explains like this. This is the beauty of Lakutei Sichos. I'll tell you which volume it is. It's Chelik Ches. So we have their argument. They're on the surface, they're disagreeing. It's not a mitzvah, it's a general mitzvah, or it's an individual mitzvah. But every opinion in Torah is valid and complementary. In other words, as explained over and over again in Chassidus Lakutei Sichos, there's never an argument ever in Torah like this. It's always like this. It's different levels of the same subject, but they complement each other. Higher level, Shammai is a higher, more stricter level. Hillel is a more chesed level of the same truth, but it's not a contradiction. It's not like we're arguing now what time it is, and I say it's this time, we say it's that time, and then could be I'm right or you're right, could be both wrong. Chas v'shalom, in Torah, there's no such argument. It's all eilu v'eilu divrei likim chayim. It's all the words of the living God. So they're saying different things. It's a different level, different perspective, or a different level of the same truth. And we're going to demonstrate this now in these 3 opinions. So that explains like this. How b'chlal does teshuvah work? There are 613 commandments, 248 positive, ramach mitzvah saseh, v'shasam mitzvah lo saseh, which correspond to the 2 ramach evarim of the body, and the shasah gidim, there's 365 veins or sinews. What's a vein? Gidim can mean veins. It causes the blood not to disperse, to go here and not there. That's a lo saseh. Here, not there. The ivarim is how you act, express yourself. That's mitzvah saseh. So they're tayag mitzvahs, and they're also tayag components of the neshama. The neshama has 613 components. And in Zohar it says, which correspond to the Tayage Vadim de Malka, Kevayochel, the Eibishter manifests himself in 613 ways. Which, by the way, it's just a breakdown of the 10 spheres, which is why 613, 6 and 1 and 3 is 10, because the Tayag mitzvahs are really a breakdown of the 10 spheres. And Upside Yagon actually explains how all Tayag mitzvahs are all rooted in the Aseres HaDibros. The Aseres HaDibros are also, each one of the 10 Dibros corresponds, Chochma, Bina, Das, all the way down to Malchus. And it actually shows that Tayag mitzvahs are all elaboration in the sense of the Aseres HaDibros. When a person sins, what happens? He blemishes. He blemishes this aver, this limb, or this gid, or this sinew, or this vein of the neshama. So when he doesn't do a mitzvah, which he should do, so there's a hole there. When he doesn't do what he should do, there's a blemish there. A pagam, or something is missing, is a hole. So what is teshuvah? So teshuvah comes from a place in the neshama, here, a place in the neshama that's not affected by the sin and forever pure. In the words of the Alter Rebbe, Gam b'shas hachet haya ba'om le'itoi, even when the person is sinning, the pnimius of me didn't want to sin, the deeper level of my neshama didn't want to sin, but we drown out the voice, we drown out the protest, we get caught up in the moment of weakness, whatever it is, and the still small voice is drowned out, but refuses to go away, and it's pushing us to do teshuvah. So what does teshuvah do? It draws on the level of the neshama that cannot be tainted by sin, and therefore it cleanses and washes away the stains. It's an endless fountain of pure elikus. We spoke about the story earlier. It's the chelek alakamim. That's the source of the neshama, wherever yid is pure. And doing teshuvah is to tap into it and to bring it down. So this is, we're explaining now the opinion that said it's a general mitzvah. It's a general mitzvah to say it's higher than the mitzvahs. It's not a specific mitzvah. A specific mitzvah explaining now addresses a particular aver. A specific mitzvah is a specific instruction to do with this part of you. Your right hand, your left hand, your mind, your heart, your feet. Each mitzvah addresses or don't do or do a specific component of the structure of both the guf and the neshama. Teshuvah, said the second teretz, is a mitzvah klali. It's not a specific instruction. It's a part of me that is connected always to Hashem. What does a mitzvah do? A mitzvah connects. There's a part of me that's always connected. And to put it in simple language, it's my deep rotzen. The rotzen of a Jew, the deeper desire is never to be severed. We just cover it, we ignore it, but that's the deepest part of me. The word teshuva means to return, to go toshuv, to go inwards and to connect to that part of me that was always innocent and that protested and that didn't want to do it, and to reveal it, and therefore to regret and resolve and to cleanse the blemishes, etc. But then there's a level of teshuva. Now I'm going to go to the first opinion and explain that Baruch is it's not a mitzvah. This is even a higher level. What does this mean? That's not a mitzvah. Mitzvah means a means by which I connect to Hashem. That's what mitzvah means, connection. So we just finished explaining that there's a level of me that was always connected and nothing can get in between. That's where teshuva comes from. And now he's saying it's not a mitzvah. What's that opinion saying? So I'm going to say just in simple language, and rather the statement, and then we'll explain it. No, actually, we'll go approach it from another way. Bear with me. An interesting observation. We see that why is it that Simchas Beis Sheva, to cite one example, the drawing of the water sukkahs and Mishla Yerah, Simchas Beis Sheva Lerah Simcha Miyamah. If you didn't see this Simcha, you never saw such a Simcha. It's not even commanded in the Torah. It's hinted. It's not commanded to draw and pour water on the Mizbeach for the 7 days of Sukkot. Explains Chassidus. That's why it's the biggest simcha. So where's it coming from? Because when you're doing something that's not commanded, what does commandment mean? Commandment means there's three entities here. There's me, there's the Eibishter, and he's commanding me, so I do. But the fact that I'm commanded means there's some degree of separation. I've got to be commanded and make the connection. But then there's a part of me, not that I want to be connected, that I am connected. This is the chelik alekami mamish part. This is the mamish part. So simchas beis she'eva comes from a place you don't have to tell me. You don't have to even command. You don't have to make a bridge. I know what you want. That's why a minig Yisrael, a custom, hakofis is the most a powerful example. Hakofis is a minig, friends. It's not brought down in Mishnayos, not in Gemara, not even in Shulchan Aruch. It's a minig, and it's the biggest simcha of the whole year. Where does it come from? A minig comes from a deep part of the neshama. Where does a true Jewish custom come from? It comes from such a deep place. I just know what you want. This expresses our bond, and therefore it's the greatest simcha. A minig comes from I am a Yid. A commandment is I do Jewish. Teshuvah is I want to be Jewish. I always want to be, and I always wanted to be. I always wanted. Oh, it's true. But deeper than I always wanted is I always am. I always am. That's more than I want to be. It's I am a Yid. So this is the level that says that Teshuvah is not a mitzvah. He's saying because true Teshuvah comes from a place of the Jews more than I want. It's I have to do this. It's who I am. It's more than a desire. And that's the ultimate level of Teshuvah. That's the first explanation we gave. It's not that it's a general mitzvah, which corresponds to a level of the soul that's untainted, which corresponds to I always wanted to be connected. This is more than I always wanted. It's I am. It's beyond commandment. You don't have to tell me anything. It's not even a general commandment. It's Ich bin a Yid. In the end, that's what propels the deepest truth. Just 1 second here. Really. Sorry. You have to get to the, okay. Now, finally, the third opinion. The third opinion says it's an individual mitzvah. Stuff. The third opinion says that it's an individual mitzvah. What does this mean? So it sounds like it's the lowest. First, we were talking about Teshuvah as being a transcendent level. Then we said it's an essential level. Just by the way, I'm going to throw out for you, Seviv Kalalmin, Atzmus. It corresponds to those levels above, the transcendent level of Alikus, and then the essence of Alikus. So this Teshuvah that comes, that parallels the transcendent level I always want. Then there's the Teshuvah, in the words Chelik Eleka Mimal, is actually Chelik Eleka Mimal Kalalmin. Mimal Seviv, Mamish Atzmus. That the Neshama embraces everything from the essence of Hashem all the way down to being invested into the body. Anyway, so let's continue now to the third level. What's the third level? The third explanation is saying, it's an individual mitzvah. That explains like this, and then he actually proves that that's the one that the Alter Rebbe and the Rambam are really saying at the end. After we're not analyzing all the text, just want to explain the bottom line. What does it mean to individual mitzvah? It would appear that it's much less than we're talking till now. Till now we're talking the transcendent part of me, always wanted, the essential part of me, I always am. It's higher than a commandment, which means there's three things, no three things, it's one thing. And Yid and Eibishter are one. Now we're saying, no, it's an individual, it's one in the list of 613 things to do. That's the third explanation. So why does he say teshuvah? Because it's integral to Vida. The whole explanation we gave. What's the message over here? So the message is like this. The nature of teshuvah is a person, after he sinned, like all he wants now is connect to the Eibishter, disconnect from the world. He wants to disconnect from the world. Look what I did. And he wants to become absorbed with godliness and live his whole life. This is true teshuvah. Live his whole life in fasting and there was such Bali teshuvah. In fact, the classic example is Rabbi bar Dodaya. This was a person who did every sin in the book, every enjoyable sin in the book. And the Gemara tells a story. There was a harlot that kings employed, and there was a fortune, and he would cross 7 rivers, and he came to her, and she told him that the whole world would be accepted in teshuvah except for you. And he called out to the heavens and the angels, and no one could help him. He put his head between his knees, and his neshama, he cried, and he expired. And Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, when he heard the story, he cried that he said that a person can acquire his world in one moment, and he called him thereafter Rabbi Elazar bar Dodaya. Now, his response is like a natural response to sin. The person really regrets what he did. He doesn't want to deal with the world. So therefore comes the third mitzvah and says, no, the third opinion rather, and says, no, it's one of the 613. You don't have the luxury, and that's what the Eibishter wants to disconnect. Bring it down into the specifics. It's a specific commandment. It's one of 613. It's not the 612. You've got to engage the world. Bring this feeling, this teshuvah, not to, I don't want anything to do with the world and lock yourself away and fast and beat yourself up for the rest of your life. No, engage in the world. It's one of the mitzvahs. This is really the deepest level because it brings it down to here. It's there's a list of your obligations to do. You've got to be part of the world. You're a husband, you're a wife, you're whatever. There's things you got to do. You messed up. Good, we did teshuvah, now we re-engage. You don't walk away. I failed and that's it, and walk away. So the third opinion, the Rebbe says, the most important one. The first two opinions, they're true. It's who I am, it's what I want. Good. Now bring it down into the specifics. And he adds like this interesting thing. The Arizal says about Rabbi Elazar bar Dodaya, asks a question. Rabbi Elazar bar Dodaya, he never did any mitzvahs. How does he go into Gan Eden? Okay, he did teshuvah, he cleansed all of his sins, but he never did anything. And to go into Gan Eden, you got to have specific mitzvahs. End of the day, there's got to be, you got to produce. See, the Arizal gives an interesting answer that he was a Gilgal of Yochanan Kohen Gadol. Yochanan Kohen was a high priest that for 80 years, he was this great tzaddik. At the end of his life, he became a tzaddik, he became a heretic. And that's how he died. So this, Rabbi Elazar bar Dodaya, was as a reincarnation. Now it's complete. All the mitzvahs we had, but now Yochanan Kohen Gadol died and he didn't go anywhere because he left the world. So he did the teshuvah and plus the mitzvahs. So the job complete. All to say that you gotta be doing the mitzvahs. It's not enough, a gewalt I want and take me in it. You got a job to do in this world. That's the third opinion. So the end is all harmonious. It's I am Jewish, and nothing can take that away. I want to be connected to you, that second level, and the most important, carry it out in the daily obligations of life, engage the world. So all three opinions are harmonious and complement each other, and all explaining why Rambam doesn't mention the actual word teshuvah in his list. Okay, my dear friends, have a wonderful Shabbos.